primary type of hot extrusion is direct or forward extrusion. In direct extrusion, the hot billet is loaded into a thick wall container and forced through an extrusion die secured in a holder. The force for extruding is applied by a ramp, along with an intermediate reusable dummy block. Metal flow from the die is in the same direction as the forward motion of the ramp. Since the surface of the billet length slides along the wall of the container, extrusion force depends on the friction between the billet length and the container and the material. The friction portion of the force can be reduced by using lubrication. Force increases rapidly as the billet is upset to fill the container, then increases further as breakthrough force before extrusion begins. Upon breakthrough, the force declines as billet length decreases until a minimum force is reached. As the billet thins, the force rapidly rises again to continue metal flow radially toward the die opening. Resistance to deformation or force requirements increase markedly as the thickness of the butt or unused billet portion decreases. Hot extrusion is most commonly performed on horizontal hydraulic presses. Hot extrusion presses are usually rated in force capacity, which translates to the amount of pressure applied to the billet. That pressure depends on billet material and temper, its cross-section and complexity, length and temperature, extrusion speed and reduction or extrusion ratio. The extrusion ratio equals the cross-sectional area of the container line.
Hey everybody, Bakersville. Welcome to Bakersville, Podcastfornia.
Yeah, yes, dude. I'm so excited.
Yeah,
Me too.
yeah. How's everybody been? Welcome. This is the Spine Crackers podcast. I'm Gabe. I'm one of your hosts.
Oh right, yes. I'm Matthew. I'm one of your hosts.
Oh, right, yes. I'm Paul, one of your hosts.
Oh right, yes. Because
Why did
Paul
this
was
become?
Paul was mad because we forgot to do this last episode.
Right,
Yeah,
but then
I was fuming.
you made fun of my turn of phrase just then for reasons that felt more like bullying than necessary.
We weren't making fun of it. We were just imitating it.
Yeah, we were imitating it.
All right, you're gaslighting me.
This is this is Spine Crackers. It's the literary analysis and discussion podcast where we do long form discussion about a book every week,
Right.
And talk about it and crack some fucking jokes.
Some joke.
It's a parasocial book club. I feel like that's a good way to describe it, right?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
kind of right.
Yeah.
And today, the subject at hand is Nicholson Baker's, I think, first novel, The Mezzanine.
Yes.
The Mezzanine from 1986. Is that right?
88.
Mm-hmm.
88. No, 86.
86?
Yeah.
Fuck, already fucking up.
This was your pick too, you dum-dum.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like I was
No.
hoping it was my birth year.
It's almost my birth year. Well, it's
Yeah,
almost
mine
both
too.
of ours. It's a year before I'm old because I'm 87.
Oh, it says circa 1986, and then it says 1988.
2002,
So I wonder. I don't know why. Even in the.
You mean copyright?
Yep.
What do you
gonna-
say?
Stop
I'm
the
gonna
podcast. Restart.
All right, quick TO for me. You guys carry on.
No. Stop.
Dude, I fucking
I didn't even
fucked
hear
up,
it.
dude.
This is the bullying Matt episode.
Struggle session.
I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. Okay. 86. But
So, this was your pick, Matt. So do you want to, I guess, jump into it and just talk about, because I had never heard of this. I don't know about you, Paul, but I'd never heard of this book, never heard of this author, and I
No.
still don't really know much about him. I did not do a lot of research for this episode.
Me either.
yeah, but that's been me neither. But that's consistent. Yeah, I it was just it was one of these books that was listed as like I don't know, almost like dismissively I'd heard as like having just a kind of funny, cheeky conceit that it was exploring, and that was what it was notable for.
Mm.
But
One of the blurbs in the front calls it a gimmick novel. In my edition.
really,
Do you have this one?
Yeah, I can't tell because your background, Paul, but I think so.
That
It's, I mean, it lumps it in with other gimmick, not like it's not meant as a dig, I guess, because they talk about Ulysses and Tristram Shandy and stuff as being
What?
gimmick novels, basically.
damn, is
So
that
who knows? I don't know what was going on with the New York Times book review in 1986, but
some snarky
Spicy
motherfuckers there.
takes.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, we're talking about the Grove Press edition, which I think
Yes.
is the most widely available one at the moment.
yep.
Yeah, so I just chose it once again. Not a fun, lore heavy story about why. It was just one of these things
Lore.
where I'd seen it referenced by someone that I admired who I cannot remember right now.
Your mom.
I do admire her. She's a strong woman. Fuck you.
Fuck you.
But also,
Fuck you.
Yo, you're gonna get
Shout,
Caruso.
shout outs to Session 9.
Session 9.
Dude, Session 9.
Great,
You wanna-
underrated movie.
Let's just delve
It
into
really
Session
is.
9 real quick.
Yeah, actually, this episode is actually about Session 9.
One of the scariest movies and one of the funniest scenes ever. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Classic.
It's so funny because the movie is really fucking scary.
Yeah.
But that scene and the fact that it's David Caruso, and I
Yeah.
just can't stop just thinking about fucking CSI Miami one-liners when he's doing it. It's so fun. And the camera just zooming up
Zooms
on him
in
as
on
he
him.
goes, fuck
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, there was a lot of production value in that line. Like there was they swoop in on wires like the camera. Yeah.
I remember when we first watched it at your house, Gabe, in high school. I rewound it like 18 times. So funny.
It's definitely worth pausing and watching over and over again.
Well, now it's been reduced. It's like a GIF you can find on Jiffy or whatever.
Yeah,
at this point.
yeah. And 99.9% of people don't even know what it's from.
Right. They're just like, oh,
Yeah.
an image. We're old. This is old people. They don't even know it's Session 9.
They don't even know Session 9. David Caruso's early work, or middle
Yeah,
work, I guess.
It's just a GIF to you kids.
You and your...
However, Nicholson Baker, right, would be someone who would have a long and somewhat insightful tangent to go off about that itself.
Yes.
I haven't read anything other than this book by him.
Is he... So, literally, this is how little research I did. Is he American? Is he...
Yes.
What's his background? I don't know anything about the guy.
He's American. This is his first book. I guess this is something that he's kind of known for, which is drilling down on details. But yeah, I've not read. He's written a decent chunk of other stuff, and this is the start of it. So yeah, operating on very little holistic knowledge about this guy as a
Right.
writer.
I wonder if he's still active writing.
He's kind of... I did see a picture or two of him. He's kind of old.
He is. He's 60. Well, he's 65, I think.
Okay.
He's got a Twitter account you can follow. It's very wholesome. He's just posts photos of flowers in his yard and stuff, and he's like, beautiful, just stuff like that.
That's great.
Kind of nice.
Mr. Baker, you're welcome on the show anytime.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. Yeah. But he was really this book was written when he was pretty fucking young. I think he was similar to the
so if he's in his 60s
unnamed
now,
lead.
right?
I think he was born in 1957,
So that would make it
and this came out in
almost exactly
86.
30. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we never get a name for the narrator, do we? Or do we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, Howie, right?
Howie.
Yeah,
Howie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but it is
sorry.
through others addressing of
Right,
him.
right.
But just to finish up the whatever is the non-spiel about. I had just heard about it. I heard it was one of these books that dilates time. That's the entire description I got.
COVID.
COVID?
Well, I just mean everyone. I feel like everyone talks about COVID dilating time now because we basically lost a year plus.
Or did a year become longer or shorter?
I don't know.
Me neither.
Both.
Both.
I feel like if more people were like Howie in this book, it would be less of a problem.
And of course, the best thing to come out of COVID was this podcast.
Yes. You know, blood from a stone.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's basically it. You know, I don't know. I forget where I'd heard about it, but a little dog wrangling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard it was like basically in the same dismissive tone as that blurb, like a gimmick novel, but one worth checking out.
So what would you say, and this is sort of a loaded question, what is this novel about? It's very short, right? It's like 130 pages.
Yeah. It's about a man's thoughts in a super small chunk of time that's expanded through his subjective digressions internally as he has a lunch break, and then takes the escalator back up to the titular mezzanine, which is the offices where he works. And that's it. And it's just his digressions throughout the day during that. What would be the total time frame of the book? An hour?
Maybe an hour and a half, an hour, 10 minutes, something like that.
I'm sure there's like a precise breakdown, but
Yeah.
something like that.
Because it's...
At one point, it was like page 80 or something, and it said like 7 minutes had gone by since his shoelace broke. I was like, Jesus.
Well, the actual like narrative of the novel is actually like basically when he comes back into the building and goes up the escalator, right?
Yeah.
But he describes basically the surrounding hour, like before he leaves for his lunch break, what he does on his lunch break, and then coming back.
Yes, I think that's actually important. Is like the time is.
So the actual time is probably like 3 minutes.
Max, like
Yeah.
not even like a minute. Like
Yeah.
he's literally, I think, taking the escalator up to his office again,
Right.
but he's recounting. Well, he has digressions back to his childhood, but he's recounting those digressions as branching off from the consideration of probably an hour and a half of time total. But the book takes place within the span of him getting on the escalator and getting to the top.
Right.
Yeah.
So probably like a minute.
Yeah.
So eat it,
basically.
Mrs. Dalloway. Eat it, Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
Well, that
suck
was
it. Suck it, Mrs. Dalloway. Suck it, Ulysses.
Yeah, you thought you could dilate time. You had no how.
Or wait, which
idea
one
how-
is it that takes place in one day? Ulysses or Finnegan's Wake?
Ulysses.
Ulysses, right? Yeah.
But that was one of the points that I was thinking about, was that like because we had read Miss Dalloway so recently, this is obviously an inheritor of the very ideas about subjective time that the modernists and stuff were messing with. I mean, Proust is referenced directly as well.
Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting because the novel struck me as kind of like a bridge between that kind of like modernist, Mrs. Dalloway, like Ulysses, whatever, kind of preoccupation with subjectivity and kind of the phenomenology of memory and et cetera, and the more kind of like postmodern or, whatever you want to call it, sort of like David Foster Wallace style, like digressions upon digressions upon digressions. And there's, of course, this book very liberally uses footnotes as
Right.
well, which is like one of the hallmarks of, Wallace's kind of style. So it fits kind of in an interesting spot for me between those, styles of writing, I guess.
Yeah.
I hadn't read anything like this up until this point, so it was really like fresh for me. It was
Me
like a
neither,
totally
though.
new experience. You too?
Yeah, not
I
really.
mean, I haven't read any
this.
like David Foster Wallace or anything, so I don't know how
But he
closely
doesn't do.
related they are.
He does footnotes. He doesn't do this. Whatever.
Yeah,
this is.
yeah, it's not
Okay.
the same. It's just like I mean, just kind of sort of stylistically, right? Like in the actual writing, not necessarily the specific preoccupations.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's why I was saying like the mezzanine as a sort of metaphor potentially for Nicholson Baker's own conception of his place in the literary tradition might be like trying to be evoked. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like the mezzanine, which I had to look up. I'm gonna confess, just to get it straight, but like is a floor between two floors.
I want to say it as like a as one of those like people from like across the bridge in New York in those Italian suburbs who say like mozzarella, the mezzanine,
The mezzanine.
the mezzanine.
Mezzanine.
But yeah, literally like a kind of like interstitch, like a weird middle ground between two more firmly defined I don't know, like boundaries.
Right.
So
Well,
I
and
don't
it's
know if that was
also-
super intentional or not, but
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how intentional that sort of meta point is, but it also functions in the novel. I think of kind of signifying, because one of the things that the narrator, that Howie is kind of like not obsessed with, but that he mentions many times is like these sort of formative or transformative moments in his life, like when he sort of these big realizations that he brought out of childhood, and then there's a moment in the book where he talks about like, this was the instant that I sort of became an adult, right? When I sort of realized who I was as a person.
yeah.
And he's kind of like in this, he's not like a washout loser or anything. He's got some kind of office job, but it's sort of about time and memory and like being in between moments in your life, I think, as well.
Yeah, partially, but there's such a robust faculty to notice and engage with like the super mundane details of everything that doesn't feel youthful or like somebody who I think in this case is like 24 years old.
Yeah, early mid-20s, yeah.
I mean, there is definitely almost like a spectrumy kind of like sensation with somebody who is like really drilling down on like every little fucking detail.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Paul, but one of the things that jumped out to me about the narrator, because we do get some like dialogue and interaction between Howie and other characters in the book, and his internal states are so different from like how he projects himself to other people, and like the interactions that he has with other people are completely normal, right? Like just normal banter, office banter, or whatever. But internally, the description of what's going on in his head is so fucking insane that it's like there's this huge juxtaposition.
Well, I don't even really consider it to be insane, really. I feel like the scene,
problematic word.
The scene that where he's in the urinal, which is like an amazing chapter. He goes through all these things, like from going on like a 4-page rant about the automatic hair dryers or hand dryers that were new in the 1980s.
The Dyson Airblade.
Yeah, and he talks about how like if you can't, like the paper towels were better because you could wash your face with it, and he goes into a rant about how if you want to wash your face or dry your face, you have to use toilet paper now because there's no hand towels. It's just like, it was so fun. I mean, I was cracking up, like laughing out loud, like throughout this entire book. But
it's absolutely hilarious. The book,
it's super funny.
It's one of the funniest books I've ever read. I'll just say that.
Me too. But going back to what I was trying to say, like the inner monologue he had in that chapter about like interacting with his like superiors while they're going to the bathroom and he can't pee, and then he has this story about in his head about how he can pee when he's nervous in the bathroom. Like all of it to me, or most of the book, seemed like logical in a way, like thoughts that I have, but I never actually like think of them enough to actually clearly like write them out or be able to write them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seemed like he took his subconscious thoughts and like clearly spread them out. So they can appear to be like absolutely crazy, but you end up or I ended up realizing that I have weird thoughts like this too. Which was, I don't know. I thought it was really cool.
I mean, I think that that's kind of probably part of the point, maybe for Baker, is that, and I had that same experience where there were so many moments in this book that, and we can probably talk about some of them later, but that just resonated deeply with me, where I was like, I fucking feel that. Like, it's like it was very hashtag relatable in a lot of moments. The hand dryer one was actually one of them for me, because I get very angry at the Airblade dryers, and I think they suck. And I frankly hate all air hand dryers in bathrooms. Like, if I go into a bathroom and I only see the hand dryers in there, I get angry. Like I give me paper towels.
Yeah, me too.
Except for the cool like weapons in like certain role-playing games where you have a air blade that you use.
Yeah. Avatar, and Skyrim shouts notwithstanding.
Yes.
But
and I do like the ones that have like a blue light in them. They have like 8 air holes. You know what I'm talking about? Up and down.
8 air holes? What is this?
Yeah, there's like 8 of them,
what
and
luxury?
There's a blue light.
Damn,
I don't know.
where are you going?
Some movie theater I went to. A couple of them.
No, fuck that. I want paper
towels.
towels.
They don't work that well.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You got to fucking sit in them for like 5 minutes for them to actually dry your fucking hands.
And that's his point. That's one of his points.
Right.
That's one of his ranting points.
How he's like,
no one wants to leave their hands under there, so they end up flicking the water everywhere.
Yep.
Right.
Which I do, and then I wipe it on my clothes.
Yeah, he's like the hygienic aspects are questionable because of the time-saving measures have been harmed through the air blade and other things, and also therefore it kind of unexpectedly, and this is kind of his points with a lot of banal innovations in like consumer product technology, it creates these like ripple effects that create nostalgically charged rituals of fond memories, or bullshit where you're wiping your kind of semi-wet hands on your pants, and it's like even less hygienic than just having paper towels.
And I feel like that's one of the other things about the
novel. This book,
it's so good. It's so funny. I mean, I think that's one of the other things about it too, is that like it's also a commentary on sort of like. But again, okay, I guess I'll finish my point before I say the but again. But it's this commentary on like social change and, like you said, Matt, like nostalgia for like earlier eras and all. It's very sort of like about excavating memory and sort of connections that you have between people and time periods and objects and spaces and sort of tactile sensory experience. Very phenomenological in that sense. You know what I mean? He has a really good eye for how things appear visually and how things sound and feel.
Yes.
And the way that those things get interlaced with and connected with memory and individuals and periods of your life.
It's perfect because it's like an evocation of like materials. Like I felt the flimsy paper or the how easily plastic rips after in like a sort of shrink wrapped vinyl record that you buy after the first breach, or the glass doorknobs that he's describing. Like everything like had a sense memory embedded even within myself that was part of almost the weirdly grounding effect of the book. Because I don't know about you guys, but like one thing that I love a lot, sort of abstractly, but for reasons that ultimately relate to material reality in the literal sense of like touching different types of material, is like lists of how, okay, like IKEA furniture is a good example. Like when they tell you that like you need to screw in this and flange blah blah blah, like needs to be flush with wood, spinnaker blah blah blah, and like reading that stuff just dryly without even the like pretense of some sort of literary context to be in, like in this book, is satisfying. Like I love reading like just descriptions of assembly and how material goods are produced and stuff like this, and I get a sense that like Baker also does like almost sensually.
Yes. Yeah, it's very sensual.
Yeah, that's interesting that because I normally don't like I can't learn or like I can't learn like that. I can't even when in school when something was like trying to be explained to me like the assembly of something. I am such a visual learner that I like hate that kind of writing actually. Like I'm happy that the IKEA stuff ends up having like picture diagrams because I'm like, oh, I understand that.
Oh,
But
to
this
to
book,
clarify, I'm not
Oh, go ahead.
capable to learn. I just like it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
It doesn't help me assemble. I just like
Yeah.
it.
But I mean, I will
Well-
say, Baker is so detailed, and he just puts every single possible angle around whatever he's trying to say, that it became so easy for me to visualize what he was talking about, which
Right.
was like a first for me.
Well, I think, Paul, you probably have a unique perspective a little bit on what Matt was just saying, because like you are, you know, like a practicing, you know, I don't know what you call yourself, but like you build things and you put things together, and like, so I thought it was, I think you may have a different kind of perspective on that in terms of like, you know, you do it and feel the doing of it versus the description of the doing of it, which kind of what Matt was describing. And I feel like Baker kind of does both in a way,
Yeah, it felt like
or describes both well, at least.
I feel like if Baker was describing how to, like if he wrote a book about putting like a house together from the foundation up, I would read the entire thing, and it would be so enjoyable.
Right.
Because he could do it so well. But the thing about it is, it's not just his writing style isn't just like textbook. One step follows the other. It's not like that. It's just like there's a lot of instances
Not
of
at
just
all.
like
No.
where he shows how almost poetic he can be also. And he also does that a lot in the footnotes, which was interesting to me.
Some of the best content is in the footnotes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because ultimately it's a literary enterprise that he's undertaking, and one of the small I watched one interview with him from 2013, and he said that he was interested in being an inventor.
Mm-hmm. As a child, right? I think I might have actually seen the beginning of that
Yeah.
interview.
You know, him and his dad. I guess his dad was kind of like, you know, trying to inspire his son to maybe take an interest in exactly what he was but also, you know, he's of an age where I think that was more of a tangible possibility or something, or like felt more achievable. Basically, yeah, he was.
There was no Shark Tank.
No, there wasn't some weird media element to it or whatever. There was because who's he? He's talking about at some point towards the end. He's like just praising this Polish inventor for tackling some of the deeper issues of shoelace design.
Yes. There's a long. The shoelaces occupy a ton of text in this book.
From
Well, I
And
would say that
I think
the
at the end there's a
shoelace-
very long footnote about shoelace design.
yeah.
I mean, the shoelace is basically the main or the one plot point, right? The shoelace breaking.
Right.
It starts
And then
everything.
and then he realized that his other shoelace broke the day before. So, you know, woven throughout the novel is this plot to get to the bottom of how the hell they broke at such a similar time.
Basically, the shoelace is the Sauron of this book.
Yeah.
But then there was some like I love it because this is like I love it's 135 pages and there's such a like for all the digressions and sort of, you know, Russian doll footnote structures that are going on, there's like a payoff basically at the end where like at the fucking top of the book he's like, shoelace, it broke, why?
Right.
And at the end he's like, some people would have you believe that like the externalities involved in shoelace abrasion and all of the factors that you would possibly have to calculate in order to accurately describe why my shoelaces broke at these alternating times but still super close is too hard to fathom for the human brain. And then he's like, and then he's despairing, right? Because there's the world is too chaotic, it's too hard to wrangle with. And then there's this one Polish scientist who's like, no.
I got you.
My life's work is actually involved in solving just this because I had the same experience, and that's like the human connection he has to that.
Right.
I don't know. It's just like he takes you on a journey, and it's literally with like a shoelace breaking.
Well, I think that was possibly a little bit of his point too. Is like, can I write an interesting novel about the most boring thing I can possibly think of, which is my shoelace breaking?
Okay, I actually was thinking about this because of the footnotes, and you said David Foster Wallace, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think they used the footnotes for a similar conceptual reason of just like the phenomenological reality of human thoughts being one that digresses. And so, you know, like in Infinite Jest, I believed he wanted those to be footnotes, and they ended up being endnotes for like consumer reasons, but you know. But that was the last book that David Foster Wallace was trying to write. You know, The Pale King.
Which by the way,
novel...
I'm sorry not to just, but
yeah.
fuck endnotes. Fucking footnotes are superior to endnotes in literally every possible way. And I just need to put that out there.
Oh yeah,
I firmly agree with you. And his last novel, the one he couldn't finish, you know, before offing himself, was about boredom. Was literally he was trying to tackle the like insane task of like writing a boring book that was interesting. And I feel like he must have read Baker, right?
If he didn't,
who did it successfully?
If he didn't, he should have, and maybe it would have stopped him from killing himself. F in the chat, because this, like, in terms of Wallace's goal, right? Like a boring, interesting book. This is it. Like, it was already written when he like undertook that task.
I'm just so curious if he did. I don't know if people know. Hey, listen, what's the Great Concavity? Is that the podcast?
Great Concavity. Shout outs. The DFW podcast.
If y'all know,
we'll do a little mini-sode on it.
If
Joe
he read
Rogan
Baker,
podcast.
Yeah. If Joe Rogan, if David Foster Wallace read Nicholson Baker, let us know.
Or fuck it, why not David Foster Wallace if you're out there?
Yes, if someone
faked his own death.
If a medium can channel you, or if it wasn't real, yeah.
Yeah, dude. David Foster Wallace went fucking Tupac, dude. He's still alive.
That would be so insane to see some sort of hologram.
David Foster Wallace
here.
David Foster Wallace and Tupac are both living on an island somewhere together.
We just have the on cinema like Tom Cruise CGI like kid coming in.
Or the old guy that says he's James Dean.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh god. But yeah, I mean, I think like the connections are so clear. I think that it's a question worth pursuing. Like, did Wallace read Baker? And you know, if not, he should have.
Or Baker's preoccupations at 30 were those of Wallace. Actually, kind of probably close to the same time.
Right.
Or at least in age. But anyway, yeah, that was my only point. Just because the footnotes thing obviously like immediately draws the comparison, and I just wonder if also, you know, that was a bit copped. Because like a lot of the humor of this book plays to me as someone who's read all the Wallace stuff and is toxic Wallace fan. It plays as a lot of the humor that Wallace himself tries to do in his novels, which is like the hilarious banal particularities teased out to like extreme degrees.
Right. But the other thing like about what I've read of Wallace, and I'm not a Wallace scholar. Again, concavity, anyone, Wallace people, if you want to come on and talk about Wallace, let's do it. But like from what I've read of Wallace, there's a not a bitterness. I mean, but like there's condescension, and there's some level of like anger in Wallace's writing in a way.
Yeah.
And there's none of that here. Like Baker is the most super wholesome and like is able to find not even the absurdity, the humor, yes, but not even the absurdity or the bitterness or anger in these like menial details, but the heart and like the human connection and the beauty. You know what I mean? Which kind of what you were saying earlier, I think, Paul.
Yeah, well, I found it to be like, yeah, like what you're saying. And you said this in text like 2 days ago. You said that this was kind of like a wholesome American Psycho.
Yeah,
because it is someone who's like.
I really think that was like the first thought that occurred to me like after I finished the book.
After I finished it, I still thought that was very accurate because it's like a lot of hyper thoughts about social interactions or whatever.
And specifically, and the thing that triggered me to think that originally was that there's a lot of stuff specifically about like office interactions and like American professional life and like how you talk to, like, what is the proper way to end a like there's a great scene at the beginning early on in the book where he's talking to the secretary in his office as he's about to leave for lunch, and she has to take a phone call in the middle of their conversation, and there's a great like digression about what is the proper way to like end the conversation, like how much do you have to talk before you, like he's like, we'd already talked too much for me to be able to just walk away, so I had to wait, but if then she's on the call for a certain amount of time, then I'm allowed to just kind of wave and leave, and like just like there's a whole like going down this rabbit hole about how to properly end certain office conversations.
Yeah, brilliant.
The versus oops.
Yeah,
conversation
Bigfoot. Oh
was
my
also,
god,
it was really good.
I so called out like oops.
Just what
to,
white men just saying "oop" whenever they
oop
oop
whoop, whoa, just
it me.
Yes, fuck. Yeah, I just saw that. I was like, how? God damn it, 86. All right.
Sorry, Paul. I interrupted you earlier. What were you saying?
Yeah.
I forget what I was saying, but I wrote down Seinfeld in my notes because I was thinking like, there's the thing about Seinfeld is the show about nothing, but I was like, this is so much more about absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And funnier, even though I think Seinfeld's funny, but
it's
I also had, it's funny. Wow. I can't really watch it anymore because of Kramer or Michael, the guy who played Kramer.
Yeah.
He's this awful human being. But I was also thinking, have you guys seen Peep Show?
Yeah.
I've seen a few episodes. Yeah, no, I know.
I had a little bit of Peep Show, kind of English-British humor vibes from this book as well. Maybe it's just like the cheeky nature of it, but also, Peep Show is just like entirely inner monologue of the main character, Mark, that goes through all these kind of social situations of his own.
And curb your enthusiasm, right? Like, there's just that kind of like obsession with minor detail in your life, metastasizing into an all-consuming issue that you can't move forward without addressing and somehow resolving, even though that might be impossible. Right.
But I think
I don't know.
One brilliant aspect of it, though, nothing huge ever happens. It always is literally so nothing. Isolated. Nothing happens. It's so isolated to like these not even plot points that he just was able to like get down to like the string of the universe of this idea,
Sorry, I'm looking at okay, so one of the things I unfortunately didn't start underlining stuff until the latter half, so my observations are stacked towards the end.
That's fine because most of my underlining and stuff is at the beginning, actually.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So one of the other, because we've been doing comparisons, and like one of the other things that I had written down before was like, I wrote not a Proust fan ? Because he says, although I don't trust this, and this is a smell memory tie, so that's going to immediately invite Proust into your conversation. So although I don't trust this olfactory memory trick anymore because it seems to be a hardware bug in the neural workings of the sense of smell, a low-level sort of tie-in underneath subtler strata of language and experience between smell, vision, and self-love which has been mistakenly exalted by some writers as something realer and purer and more sacredly significant than intellective memory, like the bubbles of swamp methane that awed provincials once took for UFOs.
Yeah, that's so good.
He is maybe he's a little preoccupied with like mind as such or something, like some sort of like biological. This is where the spectrumy evo psych kind of thing comes into play a little bit for me. But he was just like, yeah, I feel like that was addressed to Proust, like to the people who would be like, this is Proust's exercise, just short.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I mean, there were a number of passages that I thought kind of like signaled that, right? Because he's obviously concerned with some of the similar kind of themes of Proust, like nostalgia and memory, and sort of like, you know, how these associations or these events or these experiences that you've had in the past just kind of like control you in a way, or pop back in and like make your current life what it is. There was a passage it's on 47. It's the end of it's the very end of chapter 6, and I thought that this paragraph in a way is sort of like the question of the book, or the thesis of the book. So I'm just gonna read it. He's talking about milk, and he's talking about like the design.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to say that milk is no longer canceled after this book. He drinks
right,
a lot
that's
of
right.
milk.
We canceled milk last episode.
It is no longer canceled because of this book.
You're right. I take it back. Milk is
wholesome,
uncanceled.
delicious.
Milk is uncanceled.
It's back on the menu.
Although his
Back on the menu.
his love interest can't drink any.
Oh yeah, L.
L.
Which is that his wife, or is it just a girlfriend, or just a love interest? I don't know if we can get any definite.
We don't.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
but I think it's just a girlfriend.
Yeah. So anyway, but she has, and there's funny moments of just random kind of like gross out humor where he talks about her like bloody diarrhea drinking milk. It's like, oh god, like that was gross. But anyway, so this is after talking about the design of milk cartons, where he, you know, somehow winds up talking about Tacitus and like Greek history, and like it's like so funny. And then he comes back to talking about milk. And one of the other themes of the book, I know, it's like sounds ridiculous, right? But one of the other kind of things that he does in the book, the narrator, is kind of like try to take stock of like how often specific memories occur to him. At the very end of the book, there's like literally a list of like the number of times he thinks about all of these different topics. It's so funny. But so anyway, so on 47 he says, I have then only one unit of adult thought about milk to weigh against dozens of childhood units. And this is true and this is true of many, perhaps most subjects that are important to me. Will the time ever come when I am not so completely dependent on thoughts I first had in childhood to furnish the feedstock for my comparisons and analogies and sense of the parallel rhythms of microhistory? Will I reach a point where there will be a good chance, I mean more than a 50-50 chance, that any random idea popping back into the foreground of my consciousness will be an idea that first came to me when I was an adult, rather than one that I had repeatedly as a child? Will the universe of all possible things I could be reminded of ever be mostly an adult universe? I hope so, indeed. If I could locate the precise moment of my past when I conclusively became an adult, a few simple calculations would determine how many years it will be before I reach this new stage of life, the end of the rule of nostalgia, the beginning of my true majority. And luckily, I can remember the very day that my life as an adult began. And I think that like what the word that jumps out to me from that paragraph is microhistory.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of like what this book is. Like he's doing a microhistory of his life, and specifically this moment in his life, this hour where he leaves and comes back and is riding the escalator. And I just feel like that is, you know, I don't know. I don't feel like I've never read anything like it, really.
because
Well, I
because
think.
this.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Man.
sorry. Just a short point is just that this book also we said like the sort of layers of time around the different discussions, but also this book itself is written multiple years outside of the memory
Yes.
that he's discussing as well. That's all.
Wait, what do you mean?
He is like working a different job and is like several years or more outside of the memory he's recalling and trying to like transcribe in this book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that I think, Gabe, to your point, I think this book really gets into like the zeitgeist of the 1985, 86 in a really awesome way. Like I don't know why, but I thought this book was written in 2004 because I think I looked at the beginning and it might have been published again in 2004. But after like halfway through, I was like, this book takes place in like 1987. Just by like all the tactile things and all the items and the CVS bag that had to be stapled before it had like loops on it. It like dated itself so well. And it really just,
Yeah.
I think it can be like almost like a historic relic for people from like 100 years from now. They can read this and be like, this is the hour in a day of some weirdo, but still it's like very detailed and accurate. And you can get a weird sense of history.
Yes.
From
I
it.
think it was also intentionally dated, I think, even in the like mid to late 80s. Like it was also trying to evoke nostalgia, obviously, and therefore like old. Like he when he's talking about milk, he's talking about the milk delivery and the like.
I just think the word milk is funny now. Milk.
And the peculiar like experience of like the doorstep delivery of like glass bottles of milk, and then the innovation of the like spigot tab that you could push into existence through like adhesive tension technology, and then how like the labels of the brands of milk. This maybe the most 80s thing is like the fixation of like a kind of like the consumer goods that he's experienced over his whole life.
Yes.
Right?
It's
very brand heavy, the book. Like
Yes.
there's a lot of brand names.
and also
Papa
a lot of
Gino's.
sort of like
Yeah, Papa Gino's, dude.
Papa Gino's pops up all the time.
and very yeah, it's a micro history of this person's like experience in their life, but it's tied to the larger history of, like you said, Matt, American consumer goods and the way that sort of we engage with, everything from milk to, hand dryers to staplers. There's like a long thing about staplers early on. And it's all very like properly historical in the sense that he talks about like how stapler design like evolved alongside certain like architectural innovations and like the way that they're just the colors and everything. It's like it's very academic in a way, I would say. Like he really like brings out a lot of these like super obscure details about these products that he's talking about, but then always sort of loops them back into this very deeply personal kind of connection that he has with them.
Yes.
Yeah, one of my favorite examples of that is when in one of the footnotes he's talking about the aluminum foil that goes over sandwiches and how it's thinner so that like the sandwich gets wrapped easier. And then he ends up finding the guy who invented it, and he had plans to like congratulate him.
Yes.
And then he ends up calling, or does he call? I think he ends up calling, and then like the phone rang, and he panicked and thought like, oh, he was like, what if he's dead? And his wife picks up, and then I have to like talk to her about how she's a widow now. So he hangs up.
Yeah.
That cracked me up.
He's like, I couldn't bear the thought of like the whatever, like the benighted voice of a widow on the other line.
Yeah.
And it's like, damn, and but that's a perfect example of him tying in like, something so, again, I think the point is like intentionally silly, like the the gauge, the thickness of aluminum foil, and
Yeah.
then he wants to talk to a guy about like, oh, like, you know, I love your innovations technically with like the thickness and like, were you most proud about like the thickness of the aluminum foil? Were you really, or were you more proud about the device you invented to help cut it off at certain points to create like sheet measurements to be rolled and all this kind of thing? And then it ends in this incredibly human observation that like maybe he's dead and I'm gonna talk to like you know, his sad widow wife.
Yeah, there's always like an element of real humanity to almost all of these little moments. And I think that's a good example of that. Like it brings you back to not to reality, but to just the humanity of Baker. But you're right, there is like there's a overbearing comedy silliness to the whole thing. But I don't think it takes away how I think Baker is slightly critical of the world he is describing. I mean, it's never outwardly cynical like what you guys are talking about with Wallace, but it's there. I think, at least I got the sense of it, even though it's done in such a wholesome way.
Or
I
he's
feel
just,
like
you
it
know,
was there.
It's hard to say for me.
Yeah, I think he's in awe of the ways in which super banal and minor shifts in specifically, I would say, consumer goods reverberate out and change the like very human rituals that we conduct without thinking about, you know, on a day-to-day basis, which then end up becoming profound because we do them like all the time, or like and that's why he ultimately also like I think segues into this like thing about like how often do I think about the things that I also experience, usually via the like qualities of the things I consume. So like my
Yeah.
shoelaces are fucking milk, or like earplugs or whatever. Like he's you know, he's like these are things that have no real bearing, what, you know, like on me as a human being, but they really
Yeah.
do. They really do.
Yeah, I mean they occupy our thoughts, right? It's like
At one point,
And they shape our experiences and our sort of identities, right?
yeah.
At one point, he's talking about water boiling. On page 102 of the Grove Press edition, he's at this point clowning on everybody, and he's describing water boiling, the example of a boring thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
the
Yeah.
example of an interminable, boring thing.
Yep.
And he still manages to kind of tie it in. Like, I don't want to read the full thing. It's a footnote. But what does he get into with it? He calls some of the bubbles later still as glutinous toad-like globes of hard boiling took over. And then he describes boiling water as like the cure for when he has a cold, and his parents used to like bring him over to the stovetop to inhale steam to clear out his like congested lungs and nose.
Right.
And like again, it's a beautiful that's like such a microcosm of like the exercise of the book continually is like you take something like the surface imperfections in a pot, allowing for the accretion of air to create a bubble and escape in the form of steam. Super scientific, heartless almost. And then you have a childhood memory of him being held by his father over a steaming pot
Yes.
in order to like soothe his cold. And like, you know, I don't know that. Yeah. Once again, I think he's continually describing like, right, like that path, leading you down that path.
Yeah, and again, it's you know, it's the mundanity. Is that a word? Mundaneness, mundanity. I have no idea.
It's
Mundanity, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of kind of, those formative experiences, right? Which from the outside are boring and, to quote Clifford Lee Sargent, bloodless.
No.
And just kind of, nothing. And they become so imbued with meaning and weighty,
Well, yeah, he's able to bring out the profundity of a mundane experience.
Right.
I would say.
Right.
Because like what Matt was just saying, like he can talk about something so dry and so dull, and then either in a footnote or not in a footnote, he can go into some nostalgic memory that you end up realizing influences his thoughts at the current moment.
And I think one of the reasons the book is so relatable and kind of like just struck a chord with me, there were some very specific things that I was like, yes, like I fucking feel that exact same way.
Like
but also like the air
dryer.
dryers, or there's a footnote that I might read later about people flicking cigarette butts out their windows in cars.
Oh, that was great.
So good. So maybe I'll read that in a bit. But so there's like these very specific, detailed descriptions of things that many of us have experienced, and some of them will resonate with almost anyone, I think, that reads this book. But just in general, it makes you think about like those memories that you have and those moments in your own life that become formative, that become, part of who you are. And it's something small. It's something, from the outside, something that is meaningless or stupid or boring or whatever, but that becomes sort of ingrained in the fabric of your own identity. And I think that's what this book does better than anything, is to get you to sort of examine those, like, what are these experiences for me, right? This guy's experience of his shoelace or the boiling water or whatever, any of the dozens of experiences that he describes in the book, what are mine? You know what I mean? What are the things that stick out to me in that same way and have shaped me?
Yeah, and also what things do you maybe have almost OCD like strange thoughts about? Like there's one, I didn't underline it, but there's one passage where he's talking about how he's trying to separate his adulthood from his childhood by like he has like a 17-year idea. So when he's 17 years older, he'll have enough of the memories he had when he was 17 and younger, so that then he will be like absolutely full of new adult memories, so he can discount the pure nostalgic ones from when he was a child.
Right.
And that was one of those times, and there was many of them, where I was trying to think of like weird thoughts I have about, or like that, where I make up like weird numbers or something to talk about some weird subconscious idea that's going through my head, that if I were to actually like say it out loud, I'd be like, I'm thinking crazy thoughts right now.
Yeah, do we all have an example of some kind of unbidden thoughts that are banal? I would say are banal, but like still you're like, this is strange, but you have them commonly.
I mean, it's not really so much an example of that for me, but the thing, what I was saying to Paul is like these like very vivid sense memories that you have that you like that carry forward into your life. And for me, one of them is, so like, okay, nowadays and you guys know this, you've been to my house and slept over, and we've had fun adult sleepovers. Not adult like sex, like just we're adults.
Adult swinger
sleepovers. Fun swinger adult sleepovers. But when I sleep, I like to have background noise. I play YouTube videos. Sometimes I have the TV on. I love like those like ASMR like sleeping like city rain chatter videos. I fucking love that shit. And I've been thinking recently about like why does this like click with me so much? And I remember I've had vivid memories of, we used to drive when I was a kid back and forth between New York City and where I'm from. and late at night sometimes, and my dad would always have on like NPR or talk radio or whatever, and I'd be falling asleep in the back seat, and just the sounds of like the radio being like loud enough for him to hear but not loud enough to keep me awake, and the car and him shifting in the seat, and that was like the most soothing, like best fucking sleep of my life. You know, and those memories
I want to catch some Z's right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm like getting tired. Jinx. But yeah, so like that's the sort of thing that this book evokes for me, is those like vivid sense memories that you have from your youth or from whenever that just stick with you and like kind of influence where you are now. So that's my example.
Yeah, I don't really. I did not think of one when I was. That's a good example, but yeah, I can't think of one. But you were talking about the cigarette butt being flicked out and how he goes into length about that. And I almost feel like that's one for me I can't totally pinpoint. But like, you know, being on car trips and seeing that as a kid and almost happening in slow motion. But he was able to just like elaborate on whatever menial thought that I ever had about that experience and like break it down and really just flesh it out. So it evoked a lot of strange nostalgic memories I didn't even know I had in me reading that passage.
I might just read that whole footnote because I think it's one of the best examples in the book of him. It's on 58 where he turns this mundane thing, and the writing is beautiful and it's just so like evocative. So this is where what you were talking about, Paul, when he's doing that like 17-year like
oh,
thing,
yeah.
right? And so the reference in the beginning of the footnote is to that, where he's like, it's a 17-year kind of break, right? Where nostalgia starts to fade and blah, blah, blah. So this is the footnote. I reached the conclusion as I was driving home fast in the dark on the highway that only a few days earlier had borne the garbage truck that had reminded me of the railroad spike and the white background trick, referencing a bunch of other, you know, descriptions and scenes from earlier in the book.
Of mundane objects placed on a clean white surface, rendering them somehow more unique than in their like natural setting.
Exactly. Which, incidentally, I kind of think is what he's doing in this book, right? He's placing all of these objects on a white background of nothing, of a guy riding up the escalator, and bringing out their and also literally, true. I had been thinking, pardon me. I'd been thinking that only after I had become a commuter had I noticed the way cigarette butts, flicked out narrowly opened windows by invisible commuters ahead of me, landed on the cold, invisible road and cast out a small firework of tobacco sparks, and how the sight had the same effect on me as the last shot of a scene in Risky Business. Again, like, it's this free associative, like, you know, referential thing. A late-night Chicago subway train sends off a flare of sparks in the darkness, bringing to a close with a crisp hi-hat cymbal, ksh, the lulling electronic hymns of the soundtrack, except that these cigarette sparks were the farewell explosions of such intimate items, still warm from people's lips and lungs, appearing just beyond your headlights and then washed out by them as you passed the still wildly spinning and tumbling butt that was traveling at 40 miles an hour to your 65. This had reminded me of how I used to open the window on car trips when I was little and release an apple or pear core into the bolster of air and noise and watch it shrink away into the perspective of the road behind the car, still bouncing and spinning fast, suddenly changed from something I held in my hand to something not mine that would come to rest on a stretch of highway which had no particular distinguishing feature, a place between human places as litter. And I was wondering whether the people who tossed their cigarette butts out into the darkness did it simply because they preferred this to stubbing the cigarette out in their ashtray, and because they enjoyed the burst of cold, fresh air from the quarter-open windows as they flicked it away, or whether they knew what moments of sublimity they were creating for the non-smokers behind them, and did it for us. Had they noticed the same fireworks trailing other smokers' cars? Did they, with the addict's sentimentality and self-regard, associate this high-speed cremation and ash-scattering with the longer curve of their own life, hurled into the darkness in a blaze of glory, etc.? I was turning these various thoughts, some of them new ones and some repeaters, around in my head when the conclusion arrived. It's so just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful writing, and it's so descriptive of the phenomenology of these experiences.
But even that passage made me laugh. Like I read that line, hurled into the darkness in a blaze of glory, like hurled into the darkness in a blaze of glory. You know, there's like little
Yeah.
snippets of humor how I was reading it, because it all came out like so cheeky.
I do think he is, in some sense, seriously trying to like kindle the fire of the similar behavior in the reader a bit. You know, like through, if anyone can make it through the book, you know, I will admit to like at least like 20 pages in being like, I don't know if I want to go through a gimmick like this. I was afraid of being bored, which I think is like a pretty natural, I don't know, hopefully, you know, kind of reaction to what I started to like sense this book was. But then it completely won me over by the end of it. But yeah, for like at least 20 pages, I was like, oh no, like tedious explication of banalities.
Right.
I was like, I'm going to be fucking bored out of my skull. And I chose
because since this book, it's been done. It's been done to death. Like, it is boring and stupid now in some ways. You know, like if so, like I think you're right, Matt. Like if someone just said like, "Oh, here's a book about tedious, like you said, like detailed explanations of banalities," I have a similar kind of, yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, well, I mean, Matt, when you first described this book to me last week in person, I was like, I hate you. You're making me what? I was like, I hate.
Well, I am
how
trying
this
to
book
troll
sounds.
you, and that's true.
And I was like, I hate footnotes. I don't usually even read footnotes.
We
so
do
I
love
had
trolling Paul with books we know he's not gonna like.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
But I had like a complete 180. I love this book. I mean, I was sold on page 9 when at the very end of the chapter it said, he just wrote, in the stapled CVS bag was a pair of new shoelaces. I like laughed out loud, and I was like, I love this book. It's hilarious. Like at that point in the book, I thought it might be like a weird noir novel because it ended so funny in that chapter. It didn't end up being that, but still, he had those similar like Gabe, in one passage you read at the end of a chapter, he had that similar like grandiosity to the final sentence that just, it happened a bunch. It was so freaking funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's raising a lot of things that I think get taken for granted as worthy literary subjects to be considered, you know, and like that's something that you could say happens a lot, or at least is an idea that like is engaged with a lot, but I would also say not successfully a lot of the time. I think it's still a practice that happens as like a point of humor, and you know, that is supposed to then segue into sublimity, but a lot of the time it is transparent that that's the case, and it's done poorly, and it's cringe and like fucking annoying.
And it's a gimmick in a bad way, right? Like there's gimmicks that are, you know, covers for lack of depth, and then there are gimmicks that entice you and kind of hook you into depth, and that's what this book is.
Yeah,
well, there's a lot of wholesome reverence to his writing as well. That like, I don't know, he takes it seriously, even though it is so funny that you can't help but like get over the gimmick of it, because he's doing it in such a great way.
Well, how you know he's taking it seriously is that you could potentially grow tired of the exploration of a certain idea, and right when that happens, he's got such a like finger on the pulse that he'll find some equally ignorable detail that he will make interesting. And like the frequency with which he does that in a 135 page book is makes all the difference. Like he knows what he's thought about this, and he's skilled, and he means what he's doing in the project of the book. So it's not.
How'd you guys read? how'd you guys read the footnotes? Did you like when you saw one? Did you read the full footnote and then go back to the section, or did you just keep reading page by page?
It's tough when they go to the next page too, and you're not done reading the top bigger font.
Some of the footnotes in this book are like 4 pages.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
like there's the one about elevator safety.
Yeah.
Not even that one about elevator safety. It's 4 pages, and the actual text, it's from 65 to 68, and on every page where the footnote is, the actual text is 4 lines.
Yeah.
And everything else is a footnote about elevators or escalators. Sorry, right?
I think there's some bit about elevators in there where he talks about the behavior he has when he's on an elevator and how he'll like pretend to be a wind up toy and walk into the wall, and he talks about how it's great because it's a little moment of privacy and you can see exactly when the door is going to open so you can stop doing whatever crazy thing you're doing. I thought that was a great little moment as well.
But ultimately, he chooses the
wholesome American Psycho.
Yes, that's such a perfect description, dude.
Yeah.
But he chooses the experience of the escalator in his own personal thoughts over the elevator because there's a linear continuation of experience. Right. Like there is
Which
a
I
kind of
forgot
deeper.
what it was.
The deeper metaphor is like like on the escalator. You see the changing of perspectives as you move through versus like the kind of discrete, isolated interior experience of an escalator ride if you're alone or even with a couple people.
Elevator, right? Like the escalator. Yeah.
And also, I had marked this down as like a comment that he basically made on footnotes themselves, which just leads me to believe that like I think even he was aware of like the potential pros and cons of doing the footnote gimmick personally, where he said they knew that the outer surface of truth is not smooth, welling and gathering from paragraph to shapely paragraph, but is encrusted with a rough, protective bark of citations, quotation marks, italics, and foreign languages, a whole variorum crust of ibids and comparses and seas that are the shield for the pure flow of argument as it lives for a moment in one mind. They knew the anticipatory pleasure of sensing with peripheral vision, as they turned the page, a gray silt of further example and qualification waiting in tiny type at the bottom.
It's brilliant, and like the fact that is in a footnote about footnotes. It's like it's so perfect. But again, like even in writing that, like it's this, and that footnote begins with a sort of like academic discussion referencing a book about the history of European morality, and like. And like it's so it's funny because he's playing like footnotes are generally seen as these academic things where you do references and blah blah blah, but by the end of it, it's so beautiful and heartfelt. You know what I mean? It comes back to the tactility of the experience of turning the page and seeing the footnote. Yes. You know what I mean? Like it always,
what your body goes through.
Exactly. It always comes back to the phenomenology of it.
He's playing footsie with you.
Oh my God, that's fucking good.
Oh, I get it. Took me a
millisecond.
Now in my Baker Free Association mind, I'm like footnotesy, goatsy.
Goatsy, yes. I'm wide open to any and all interpretations.
That's right. And I think one of the things is like with those associations that you make and that he makes. He talks early on in the book. There's a great section where he talks about like the top 8 like insights he gained from childhood, and I'll just read the list. I won't read the actual thing, but he goes, over 20 years. I tried to call up some sample memories of shoe tying to determine whether one shoe tended to come untied more often than another. What I found was that I did not retain a single specific engram of tying a shoe or a pair of shoes that dated from any later than when I was 4 or 5 years old, the age at which I had first learned the skill. Over 20 years of empirical data were lost forever, a complete blank. But I suppose this is often true of moments of life that are remembered as major advances. The discovery is the crucial thing, not its repeated later applications. As it happened, the first 3 major advances in my life, and I will list all the advances here: 1. Shoe tying. 2. Pulling up on X's. 3. Steadying hand against sneaker when tying. 4. Brushing tongue as well as teeth. 5. Putting on deodorant after I was fully dressed. 6. Discovering that sweeping was fun. 7. Ordering a rubber stamp with my address on it to make bill paying more efficient. 8. Deciding that brain cells ought to die.
And what's brilliant about that too is
yeah.
they all come into play later in the book too.
Yes.
It goes into more detail about every single one.
But I think that last one specifically, which is like jarring when you're reading that list, you're like, oh, I'm deciding that brain cells, one of these things is not like the other, right? And he goes through in the next 10 pages or whatever, each one, point by point. But the point of the last one is that he has this view that there are like neurologically, like if certain brain cells die, that it's okay because they're making room for more. It's almost like this evolutionary view where it's like the brain cells that survive will become stronger when the other ones die and form these more intricate neurological connections to other brain cells. And that's basically like what the book is doing with memory and experience, right? It's these kind of neural pathways between events and moments and experiences in our life that some drop away, but the ones that stay get stronger and stronger over time.
And he tells that explanation through an experience he had where his mom was telling him that, right? That basically you have like veteran brain cells that stick around.
I think there
but
is
you're right that go ahead.
Oh, no, you finish your thought.
I was going to say, Gabe, you're right about that being jarring. I thought he was going to go into detail about like alcoholism or something later in the book, but it ended up being way more wholesome, of course.
I think the one, I guess, meta critique in the book, if I had to guess, is though, especially when it comes to like the whole like 17-year span where my thoughts will be replaced by adult thoughts and they're more valid. Do you think Baker is do you think Baker through the character is, I mean, the character's taking that notion seriously. Do you think Baker takes that notion seriously, or do you think that's like him joking in the fact that of the delusion of that idea, which is my opinion of that idea? You know what I mean?
Which idea specifically? The sort of like brain cell thing?
No, that the brain cell thing I think ties into like the childhood memory thing, where he's like suspicious of nostalgia, which is fine, but then he's like, that nostalgia will be defeated when I have memories that are the majority comprised of things I was thinking about when I was 24 as opposed to 8 or 5. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I think it's complicated. I think that, Baker, certainly I don't think Baker is like subscribes to the like 17-year breakpoint theory or anything like that. But I do wonder about whether or not he would endorse the view that, as we get older, I mean, I do think he may endorse some variant of the like veteran brain cell, veteran memory theory in the sense that like it's hard to even talk about because it's like you don't remember what you don't remember. But like I can imagine that like when I was 15, there were childhood memories that were very influential to me then that I no longer remember. And similarly about when I'm 60, there will be memories of now or like that I have of being 15 that I won't remember. You know what I mean? But there will be some that stick around. I don't know if that is like, I don't think that means like defeating nostalgia. I just think it's about the way nostalgia evolves, right? Like the things we're nostalgic for now, we're always going to have nostalgia, right? We're always going to be nostalgic. We're always going to be.
It's not something to conquer.
Exactly. But the things we're nostalgic about evolve and sort of shift and rejigger and reconnect in our brains and in our hearts or whatever, if you want to get cringe about it, over time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mine connecting my gemstone, which I sleep with at night on my chest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. But I think
was
you're
that
right,
a
Gabe.
reference that I didn't get?
It was a reference to people that sleep with gemstones on their chest.
Oh, just like stone crystal people.
Yeah.
Yeah. If there's any crystals podcasts that want to come out on the show,
Any New Age podcasts?
Yeah.
Whatsoever. Well, you're talking about like the known unknowns and the known knowns and the unknown unknowns.
right, the famous Dick Cheney line.
Or Rumsfeld.
Oh, Rumsfeld. Sorry, yeah.
Come on, Gabe.
Oh God, Bully Gabe now.
Yeah.
It's the Bully Gabe episode.
Stupid idiot.
I think earlier I
Got
said
him.
that Tacitus was Greek, he was Roman, so I just want to get that on the
Wow,
record right now. I'm
dude.
sorry.
Why
caught that. I
does
didn't say
anyone
anything.
listen to?
I'm just
anything we have
gonna
to say?
leave, and if you don't see me
Paul and I
again, you
caught
know
that,
why.
By the way. Paul and I also caught that for the record, and we just didn't say anything.
Yeah, we did. We caught it.
Fine. What did you guys talk about it when I went to the bathroom or something?
Yeah, we were like.
Yeah, we were like,
can't believe
can you
that
believe
idiot
that he
said
actually?
Greek and
Yeah.
not
Damn.
Roman.
Yeah.
Well, I
Wowzers.
it was bugging me, and I wanted to correct the record.
Hey, Gabe, big oof, touch grass, bro.
Oop. Big oop.
Oop,
Oop. Oop.
Yeah, big oop.
oop, oop.
Yeah. One of the things I was thinking about was also, or the idea that I didn't get to say that I just want to say, was one of the intrusive thoughts that I find the most pleasant at all times, and it's been the case for a couple decades even. Is exactly what this book kind of reminded me of, which is expanding small details into larger things. And a lot of the time that leads to a sense of like the materials that comprise the details I'm looking at, because they're usually like things in the world. But it's like me shrinking myself down. One of my favorite things to do is think about me very small. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, one of my favorite movies. As a tiny little bug-sized person in whatever environment I'm in.
Ant-Man.
So like no matter where I am, I'll imagine that I'm the size of like a teeny little small ant, not even a carpenter ant, but a smaller one. And what that would be like to just be existing like that in any environment I'm in, and like that'll engross my attention. Like it's worked for decades,
Wow.
and it's super fun.
Thanks for sharing.
I hope anyone listening, and I hope you both might find it useful.
If there are any
I'll use that.
ant-sized person podcasts out there,
Please hit us up.
okay, what is it in your mind, Matt? What is it useful for? Like, what is the?
If you're bored, if
Oh,
you're
okay.
like, I'm in a
Oh,
fucking in like such a stupid, boring location, or like an airport or whatever, or like you're just sitting
meeting.
somewhere, yeah, and then you go like, what if I was small as shit? And suddenly,
That sounds like
it is genuinely like, and then what would I be doing? Like, how would I be trying to signal that I'm small? Maybe I don't want to be. You know, stuff like this just starts to like crop up the instant you start to go like, I'm not the same size as I was. But I think like indirectly, I'm describing expanding the world, or like you
Right.
know, that's kind of what is happening in a way, right? Like,
Well, because
something
as
what
you
Baker's
get
doing.
smaller, the world gets bigger, right?
Yeah, exactly right. So it's like
Science.
these things that I would
Science.
ignore. Basically, the idea is things that I would ignore become significant, and I think that's what
That's-
he's
I
describing.
think I'm going to use that
Mm.
because I really have a huge problem waiting in lines. I hate it.
right.
In Florida, I had to wait in line for like an hour and 10 minutes for the rental car, and I was going insane.
I love lines.
My phone was dead. I hate lines, and that would have been useful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
It's,
Thank
it's
you for
not a
sharing.
cure-all, but I think it's helpful. You know, you're like, what if I was so small that I could balance on the you know, you're waiting in a queue of some kind, and they have those divider strips attached to the
Yeah, that's where I
pylons?
was in that.
yeah.
Like, what if I was so small that I could balance on the little area of the cloth strip that they usually connect between the
That
pylons?
sounds fun.
And
Yeah,
it
what I was
and it
thinking
was
was
miles to me.
what I was thinking was I hope someone puts me in a cryogenic sleep chamber for the next hour because I hate this so much. I just want to be frozen. Wake me up when I get to the end of the line.
Wake me up inside.
Yeah, that's right. Shout
Yeah.
outs. Shout outs to Evanescence.
Yeah, if there's any Evanescence podcasts.
But I mean, I do think, Matt, it's interesting because like the book is, you know, he talks about microhistory, and I think in general the book is concerned with the micro, right? It's about the smallest, most granular kind of detail and experience, but precisely what you were saying, the way in which the further down you drill, the smaller your scale gets, the bigger everything else gets.
Mm-hmm.
There's a
like the quantum realm in Ant-Man.
Dude, literally exactly that.
Perfect example.
Like not even ironically, that's exactly it.
Because I was thinking about an Alan Moore quote where he was like, you know, if your conception, if like you map, if your map is broad enough, I mean, I don't know if this fully applies, but like, and this is a brutalization, but you know, if your map is accurate enough at like a macro scale, no matter how far you drill down, like your details will always comport with the overall picture and always be interesting and relevant to the overall picture. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's quite what Baker's doing, but you know, it was another thing I thought of reading the book.
I like that.
Yeah, because I think, right, like he does have, and it's funny because in the footnotes and like throughout the text, it does oscillate, right, between the like hyper micro and bigger picture, because a lot of the footnotes about sort of like the technological advance, the book is also like very about technology in a weird way,
Yeah.
like and American sort of, you know, industrial development and all of that. And all of that is very big picture, right? He talks about like sort of like big picture trends in design of consumer products and the invention of new kind of, you know, ways of designing things and so on and so forth. And that's all very big picture and very like meta historical, but it's always in connection. There's this, he draws these lines to the very, very micro scale experiences in one guy's life.
And I was like, I wrote a little note on 127 because, you know, yeah, like the meta-historical, micro-historical. And at one point I just was like, he's describing like metadata word searches now, you know, where he's just like, he's describing him trying to take account of all of the thoughts he had and their frequency. And he's describing what like the Google most searched for thing ends up being contemporarily, you know what I mean? Like you just type in like a couple words and then you see like however many fucking billion people looked up something.
Mm-hmm.
And like how that relates to a larger understanding of people in general. And that discussion on 127 leads right to his own personal list, which is so funny, of his most frequent thoughts for the year.
We should
Someone
read it together.
Paul, just read it. Paul, just read the list.
I feel like we should read the last line of 126 onto 127 too, because that is Google. Like you said, Matt. Like he's just describing that phenomenon on sort of Google search, right? Like, I mean, I guess I'll just read the sentence and then you can read the list, Paul. Like,
okay.
If we could assign a periodicity number in this way to every recurrent thought a person had, what would we know? We would know the relative frequency of his thoughts over time, something that might prove to be more revealing than any statement of beliefs he might offer, or even than a frozen section of available potential thoughts, if that were possible, at any one time in particular.
Yeah.
Like you're exactly right. Like that's Google, that's metadata, that's what's happening like right now.
But still, even right now, what he's trying to get at is an individual's like Google search data, which is, you know, I think kind of the point of the microcosm of this book is like, how close can you get to when you are, you know, focusing and focusing and focusing? How close can you get to any real data-driven truth? And I think at a certain point, things do break apart, and you can't get certain information. I think that actually comes into fruition after this list, but I'll read the first page because it's hilarious. So the list is broken into subject of thought and number of times thought occurred per year in descending order. Number 1, L, which is his girlfriend, 580. Family, 400. Brushing tongue, 150. Earplugs, 100. Bill paying, 52. Panasonic three-wheeled vacuum cleaner, greatness of, 45. Sunlight makes you cheerful, 40. Traffic frustration, 38. Penguin books, all, 35. Job, should I quit? 34. Friends, don't have any, 33. Marriage, a possibility, 32. Vending machines, 31. Straws don't unsheath well, 28. Shine on moving objects, 25. McCartney more talented than Lennon, 23. Friends smarter, more capable than I am, 19. Paper towel dispensers, 19. What oft was thought, but nearer, etc. 18. People are very dissimilar, 16. Trees, beauty of, 15. Sidewalks, 15. Friends are unworthy of me, 15. Identical twins separated at birth, studies of traits, 14.
Yo, just keep it
Keep going, dude. Just do the whole thing.
Okay.
Just do the fucking list.
Intelligence, going fast, 14. Wheelchair ramps, they're insane danger, 14. Urge to kill, 13. Escalator invention, 12. People are very similar, 12. Not in my backyard, in quotes, 11. Straws float now, 10. DJ, would I be happy as one? 9. If you can't get out of it, get into it, 9. Pen, felt tip, 9. Gasoline, nice smell of, 8. Pen, ballpoint, 8. Stereo systems, 8. Fear of getting mugged again, 7. Staplers, 7. Roaches check in, but they don't check out, 6. Dinner roll, image of, 6. Shoes, 6. Bags, 5. Earl butts, 4. Sweeping, brooms, 4. Whistling, yodel trick, 4. You can taste it with your eyes, 4. Dry cleaning fluid, smell of, 3. Ziploc tops, 2. Popcorn, 1. Birds regurgitate food and feed young with it, 0.05. Immanuel Kant, 0.05, or 0.5.
And the sentence that immediately follows qualifies all of that with just, but compiling the list as I saw as soon as I began sketchily to do so in my head was not the enlightening process of abstraction I had expected it to be. Thoughts were too fluid, too difficult to name, and once named to classify, for my estimate of their relative frequency to mean very much.
Yes, exactly.
Which is important.
And no, that's like one of the most important parts, because it's if we're doing this sort of like Google like metadata critique, he's already articulating that critique in 1986, right?
Yes.
That like, yeah, okay, this person, and I think that's part of the point of this book is that, yeah, I thought about, birds regurgitating their food to feed their young 6 times last year, or whatever. Like so I Googled it like 6 times, but why did I Google it? Like, what meaning did that thought have to me, right? Like, and what connections does that thought have to other experiences that I have? Like, how is it interlinked with the rest of my inner life? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter
cells.
in and of itself. Yeah, cells within cells. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a Blade Runner reference, right?
Blade Runner.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And also a Nabokov reference of some kind, I think. I think Pale Fire.
Which is also listed in the New York Times blurb at the beginning as a gimmick book.
This gimmick thing, it just sort of irks me a little bit. I mean, it's such a, like, fucking, I don't know, like, dismissive word.
Yeah, it is. It's a very loaded
They're
term.
talking about an idea that the author's exploring, for fuck's sake.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean? But, anyway.
It sounds like a bunch of booktubers wrote these reviews.
Yeah.
I think these were all written by Clifford Lee Sargent.
He would have hated
Yeah.
this book. Actually, there's no blood.
There's not a
bloodless.
wizard.
It's so bloodless.
There's only bloody diarrhea. That's it.
There's not a wizard guiding a teenage couple through an enchanted cave or whatever the fuck people read.
This book is
That sounds sick, to be honest. But I see your point.
This book
I was trying
is,
to reference fantasy tropes that were on the list.
It's not about sex or death. Well, sort of death.
I suppose.
Soft death.
Soft death, yeah.
Memory
Aging,
death.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think significantly, like, this narrator is, well, it's just context clues that allow you to figure this out, but he's young.
Yes.
You know, I don't know what you take from that, and also Baker was young when he wrote it, so, but he seems like the kind of person that was certainly aware, you know, like, not outside of, like, the kind of, like, what you would consider the, like, postmodern kind of Wallace-style pitfalls of self-consciousness to the point of detriment, but I would kind of agree that Baker seems to have navigated that much I mean, through his continued existence on this earth more successfully. To be honest, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do. And, like, my spicy take, again, I've not, and maybe we'll do it on the show one time. Someday we can read Infinite Jest. I've not read the whole thing. I know you have, Matt. But, like, the conceit of Wallace's approach, to me, Baker just did the whole thing better in 135 pages than anything Wallace ever even attempted. I know that's spicy.
It is spicy. I haven't read any Wallace, so I can't comment.
I would just say that Baker's and again, like, he's got many other books written, but through this one alone, I would say it's not quite the same preoccupations.
Well, it's not the same preoccupation. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's. What do you mean? What are the key differences as you see it?
I mean, this is just once again, you know, this is like such a limited example for Baker's overall thoughts on the subject.
Oeuvre.
I mean, his oeuvre, his egg, his oof.
Oop.
You know, potentially reading more would prove what you know, that claim to be true, but I don't know. I think just the scope is obviously it's deceptively limited, but incorporating most experience. But like, I don't know. I think Wallace has some interesting claims to make about more about like media and like the self-consciousness, like how to end it, like how to cope with it, which I don't think this book gives a satisfying answer to while addressing it a little bit. It's
It
like you
also-
kind
I
of have
mean-
this like Zen hyper, like I'm super present and aware and like capable of fixating and like meditating on these things, but I would not call this book a kind of answer, and I think that's the more existential question that like Wallace is asking himself through his life, is like how to not be how to do it and how to not feel fraudulent, or how to like not have this become just corrosive or whatever, you know what I mean?
But I guess doesn't that get back to the point that we were making earlier about like Baker's kind of like embrace of pessimism in a way, about like never defeating nostalgia and never defeating, like, I guess the inauthenticity of modern life, right? Like Baker just embraces it. Like, this is just what we do. This is just the type of fucking critters that we are.
Yeah.
And Wallace wants to fight that. He wants to find a way to be, you know, real or authentic or true. And Baker, just from the jump, is just like, it's not possible.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
Yeah, Baker really doesn't denounce it. He doesn't ever really fight it or he doesn't even seem to be like that critical of it.
Right.
Like, I think as a reader, you're reading it and you're kind of like, at least I was thinking that these trains of thought seem to be a little like, if I was having them, they would be a little debilitating for me to have this kind of going through my head all the time. But then you think, well, I kind of have thoughts of my own that are similar to this and whatever.
I think there's a progressive notion still, and a bit of a like in the book, like things are improving, and the hopefulness or like the lack of despair comes from still the kind of faith in science and technology and human innovation to account for those things and improve upon them.
In this book?
In this book.
I don't know. I feel like...
At least for the character, I don't know for Baker, this is the qualification, but for Howie, I feel like that is his reality in the book. Is that like he's nervous, he's at the edges of despair at the very end with the shoelace thing.
Right.
And he needs the Polish inventor to claim, undevoted attention to a very banal, kind of synecdochic, right, or synecdoche kind of thing to make him not depressed a little bit by the end.
Excuse me. I mean,
he's not really like depressed by it. I would say he's like irritated and he wants to like solve the mystery, but
yeah, sure, yeah, you're probably more like alarmed or irritated.
I guess though, like my read on the Polish scientist thing with the shoelaces is like, it's not that he is comforted by like the advances of modern science. He's comforted by the fact that someone, like another human person, cared about this topic. You know what I mean? It's the human connection. It's not like some big claim about progress or technology or anything, I don't think. Like I read that as like him being comforted by the fact that like another subject, another person with an inner life, like gave enough of a shit about this topic to like devote his life to it.
Yeah, that could be true.
And that's all we have, right? Like I think that's part of Baker's point, is like those kind of random free associative connections is what like human meaning comes down to.
But I don't know. It's just that there's like this also 80s like heavy product kind of emphasis as the subject of the meditation, and how that is the environment in which this person is applying that perspective, that is still to me creating a small bit of dissonance where I'm like, I don't, like the horizon of this person's world is still like the effect of milk carton, spigot technology, and I don't know.
Let me read this paragraph on page 54 that kind of I highlighted because I thought it was one moment of like the narrator kind of being a little introspective in the moment. It's like it's the middle paragraph.
Gabe also dog-eared it. Nice.
Oh yeah. Do you want to read it?
No,
okay.
Go ahead.
And this is when I realized abruptly that as of that minute, impossible to say exactly which minute, I had finished with whatever large-scale growth I was going to have as a human being, and that I was now permanently arrested at an intermediate stage of personal development. I did not move or flinch or make any outward sign. Actually, once the first shock of raw surprise had passed, the feeling was not unpleasant. I was the sort of person who said actually too much. I was the sort of person who stood in the subway car and thought about buttering toast, buttering raisin toast even. When the high crisp scrape of the butter knife is muted by occasional contact with the soft heat blimp forms of the raisins, and when if you cut across a raisin, it will sometimes fall right out, still intact though dented as you lift the slice. I was the sort of person whose biggest discoveries were likely to be tricks to applying toiletries while fully dressed. I was a man, but I was not nearly the magnitude of man I had hoped I might be.
That's the mezzanine, dude. That's the mezzanine. It's this
intermediate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I found that passage to be like kind of unique because he was being like, I'm this type of person. I'm thinking this way. I feel different than other people.
Wholesome American Psycho, dude. Say it again.
Very true. Yeah. I don't know if that changes my feel that there was those acknowledgement of limits removes the kind of dissonance. Very slight though. Not again, not despairing or anything, but just more like it's one perspective. It's one perspective. It's capacious, and it's more capacious than you could possibly think. But it's still one.
Do you think Baker won though because he's alive and he's posting butterflies on his Instagram?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
Definitely. I guess the other thing that I'll say about the sort of like general outlook on technology and all that sort of stuff here is that like Howie is, for all intents and purposes, like a Luddite. Like all of the technological advances that he talks about are ones that he basically dislikes for various reasons. There's a few that he likes, right? He likes the escalators and so on and so forth, but the hand washers, the staplers, or the hand dryers,
like the plastic bags,
the plastic bags, the straws, the shift from milk delivery to the cartons, although he does admire the fact that you can smell if milk is bad in a carton easier than you can if it's in a glass bottle. So I don't know. I guess I would just say, like, I don't know. I don't want it to come. I would just reject the view that it's some sort of like Fukuyama-esque like progress of technology is good simpliciter kind of position.
No, I don't know. I have a suspicion that maybe that's Baker's optimistic. Whenever at his most optimistic, that is his position. But that's me too. Like that's like what I am bringing to it.
Well, yeah, I was kind of thinking similar things. Like I had some slight critical vibes from Baker as well, just like critical of nostalgia influencing the way Howie is, and is this the type of person that someone should be? And the passage I just read, outlining his self-consciousness about who he should be or could be, I think is a good example of that. Like,
there's definitely insecurity there.
Yeah. And I think he's asking the question, like, my upbringing, my thoughts, my nostalgic memories influence who I am right now. And is that okay? Even though I feel okay, is the person I am the person I should be?
But I guess I think that kind of like, that's why my interpretation of the shoelace scientist guy is more along the lines of like him finding this information out, and of course like the way he expresses it, maybe the only way he knows how to express it is in this very sort of clinical academic style, but it's like a validation of the way of that the person that I am is actually okay because somebody else is like this too. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I read it.
Yeah, I think the book is trying to achieve that kind of sentiment. I would kind of agree with you that like it's more of a human connection. Like, thank God I'm communing with another mind like mine, and I feel less alone.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that's basically like.
But the irony of it is that, like, I think we all had the experience reading the book that we all felt connected to the guy.
Yes.
100%.
Right?
100%. It was legit #relatable.
I heard the phrase, because I also can't shit if someone else is near me in an office setting.
That was a great
funny
segment.
And someone just said, you need to go from poop shy to poop fly.
In the stall?
Yeah, and I just let it rip, and I just think about that.
Oh, that's
Go
like,
off.
I'm actually poop fly. I'm actually gonna go off right now.
That's king shit.
I think what I'm gonna
King
do
shit.
is I'm gonna pretend that I'm really, really, really small and I'm pooping off the side of a giant toilet bowl.
Just dropping
If it
little
works,
ant
it works.
poops.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well,
Oop.
Oop. Oop.
Well, oop.
Da,
okay.
da, 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 da.
oh god.
That was good. That's what I was going for. Some dissonance.
Yeah, dissonance. You're right.
So welcome everybody
Sorry.
to our fan favorite segment of the show, where what do we call it?
Oh, nice.
We just read another
We just
book.
did read another book.
We just
Yeah,
read another
so-
book
We're impervious to critique.
where we talk about Harry Potter.
You
Yeah.
literally can't be mad that we're
Yeah.
doing this.
We just talked about a book about 1 minute up an elevator for almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
So
So why don't you
shut
chill
up and
out?
let us talk about Harry Potter, loser.
Shut up.
You elitist nerd. So this is where we take the characters from the book we just read and put them into their Harry Potter houses. This is going to be a weird one.
Because there's
One character.
There's one character, really. There's others that are mentioned, but we don't know anything about them.
It's all through one man's brain.
So there it is. Howie, dude. What house is Howie?
how we classify him.
How we got classify him?
Oh shit.
Dude,
I think I
don't
might-
know.
I think I
Ravenclaw.
might put my foot down and not answer this one.
Whoa.
What?
You,
I
This
just
is not
have
a
hold
fucking
on,
option,
dude. Hold
homie.
on.
No,
Let me
no, no,
check
no.
the official Spinecrackers rule book.
Yeah. Why don't you blow the dust off of the ancient tome?
I feel like Howie just isn't in the Harry Potter world at all.
Untrue.
He's not even-
Everyone's.
Damn, dude.
What is
All
that
right, make your
mean?
case. Make your case,
Yeah,
Paul.
defend yourself.
That's a hot take.
I don't really have a kid. I just don't want it because
Boo.
he's a squib. He's a squib.
Okay, we have classified people as squibs before.
Sure.
I think I'm gonna say he's a squib.
Okay, why?
I just feel like he'd have no magical abilities.
But he doesn't. You don't think he exhibits any of the characteristics of any of the houses?
I will say that even though we get insights into his life and his memory and how he thinks, I feel like I just didn't get enough information about, even the interactions he has with other people. I feel like it didn't give me enough information either about who he actually is, or not who he actually is, but like a clearer definition of his persona. I just never really got that Harry Potter section side where I could be like, oh, yeah, he'd fit into this house. I don't feel like I just got enough information.
The whole book is in his own head and his memory. What do you mean you didn't get enough information?
Yeah. It's only his perspective for 135 pages. Dog.
I'll go last.
Okay. Dib's not first.
Wizards are there autistic wizards?
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, like the thing, right, with the house classifications is that they're stereotypes. So you then complicate them after the fact. So I'm saying he's a Ravenclaw because he's, I think, essentially a Aristotelian classifier, taxonomist, analytic person whose whole coping approach, I think, a little bit to life is classifying and arranging data about himself in ways that he can then sort of make sense of, even though he also seems to have, a more robust, like he reads Marcus Aurelius, and he's got literary pretensions, and he's but ultimately, yeah, he's a taxonomist and a classifier and an analytic brain. So I'm saying Ravenclaw.
I agree. You basically said everything I was going to say. I think he's definitely a Ravenclaw.
All right, I agree. I just looked up the traits of Ravenclaw, and yeah, like wit, learning, wisdom,
Planning ahead.
acceptance.
Yeah.
Sounds about right. I still think he'd be a squib. But if he had magical abilities, he would be a Ravenclaw.
You could say Squib. I think Squib's acceptable.
No,
so
Squib is. We've established that. I think Squib is acceptable.
Yeah, you can say Squib, and we'll just say that's what you said.
I'm gonna say squib.
Nice.
All right.
So that just leaves one job to do, boys, which is score this one up, rack it up.
Give him that first.
All right, fine. Matt can't go first because it's his pick.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go first. I love this book. I liked it a lot. I think it's... I was shocked that I had never heard of it before because I feel like this is a book that people should read and talk about, and it's also like I said earlier, it's like one of the funniest fucking books I've ever read in my life. Like, and I don't know if we captured that enough in this episode, but it is hilarious.
Yeah.
Obviously it's like in a dry kind of like, sort of way, dry academic way, but it's very funny. So yeah, I loved it. Read it. It's a 4.28 for me.
Right on.
Nice. Yeah, I also really love this book. It was I thought it was so refreshing and just like excellent to read this after Dalloway and Great Gatsby.
Yes.
It was just such like it made the book funnier to me because we were reading these like, very highly praised classic books the last couple of weeks, and to go to just a totally different page and read something that was just like very different than what I've read and very funny. It was awesome. I loved the reading experience. I think Baker rules. I think I'm going to give it a 4.45.
Whoa.
I really like this book.
Huge ups from Paul.
I think I rated the Great Gatsby like 4.2 something. I like this more. As a reading experience.
I'm looking at it right now.
I had to go higher. Actually,
Okay.
never mind. I'll leave it like that. 4.45.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 4 even. I had my doubts at the beginning of the book, but we've read now several books that like do so much with so little, and I don't think I've like previously really like appreciated that feat in writing. I mean, this book does something that still feels like pretty fucking contemporary, and it is placed pretty I mean, I think it'll carry over into being meaningful like for a long time, in ways that like Dalloway and Gatsby have like borne themselves out to prove to be true. But yeah, I just wonder. There's such a the phenomenological experiences of people in the future. I got no fucking clue.
Yeah.
I hope that this rings true to, folks 2 generations out from me even. And I think it will. I don't think you can escape the kind of thing Baker's really talking about. So, yeah, 4 even. It's just delightful, funny, would recommend.
Read it.
I'm going to read other books by Baker, too.
I would love to.
I looked up...
He's got mad books, too. He's got, like, many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote, I think, like the last 2 or 3 books he wrote were, like, similar writing style, but about, like, raunchy sex.
Yeah, including erotica. He's got, like, a erotica trilogy that he kind of did.
That sounds like a Patreon episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
Fomata, Vox, House of Holes, which is literally Peeping Tom shit. Yeah, like, all kinds of stuff.
That sounds
Cool.
like something we should do for Patreon, which, by the way, listeners,
Yes.
If you've made it this far in a 2-hour episode about a 135-page book about riding an escalator for 1 minute, you might like us enough to subscribe to our Patreon. We post stuff there. We do, bookshelf tours and random videos and videos of us playing badminton. So go check it out. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Drop a like. Drop a comment. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can just find us, Spinecrackers.
Whoever can first get to a mezzanine, we have to just take a video of that.
Oh, we definitely need to do some. Yes. Yeah.
And if we read his sex novels on Patreon,
That's going on Patreon.
We will be naked.
Topless, at least.
Topless.
Yeah. It'll be a video podcast. Yes, and nips
That'll
out.
be a switcheroo because I'm usually bottomless on the normal podcasts.
True. Yeah. That's facts.
You heard it, dicks out for Harambe. This will be dicks out for
Tits
Baker.
Out. Man tits out for Baker.
Nips out for Baker, yeah.
Nips for Nicholson.
That's it. That is it.
Nailed it. That's it.
So thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.